Here's a subject I haven't touched enough, wanted to, but somehow it didn't really come to the point where I would go, right, this is not just about my own opinion, it's not just my own personal experience based on the fact that I have a different profile. Job hunting in 2026, or even, let's put it better, since 2020. Things have changed a lot. So I worked as a rather successful freelancer for most of my career, and up to the point of 3 years ago I had 25 years of working experience. So having said that, that does include even the early entry jobs that I had, either not related to IT or then later in IT, and then as I switched from IT to video broadcast department, I started off basically as a technician and someone who was learning, and really quickly progressed into technical lead and probably one of the best engineers in Europe, if not in the world. Most of it self-taught even, so that's not part of formal education or anything like it. It's just hands-on work. I worked for big companies, international corporations, small companies, name it. I worked for pretty much anything you can imagine. Startups to a multi-billion-dollar company. I worked for very little money, and I worked for so much money I couldn't figure out what to do with it for a couple of years. So since 2020, and when I actually edit this video, you can pause here and read. So, as you could see, I'm not the only one who is pointing out a few obvious issues. And if I wanted to dig through all of the older screenshots from the people who are also trying to look for work, or they have really great profiles, but they have run into problems with the system, whether it's because of their ex-partners, whether it's because of the fact that they were whistleblowers in their company, all sorts of things. But the main key fact is, number one, if you are outspoken on social media about any subject that is not, I don't know, ass-kissing, looking pretty, healthy, super fit, ideal, perfect, very productive, waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doing your early runs, cold showers, all the matchas instead of coffee, and all the healthy stuff. Do you understand? You have to meditate, you have to stay focused. Hyper performance is the only thing you need to project out in the world on all of your social media if you want to continue to be a part of productive and profitable society. Otherwise, you are clearly not considered worth the attention. And in the past 3 years or so, practically 4, so at the beginning of that first year, I did have a job in an IT company, small IT company here in Netherlands. They do have important clients such as European Space Agency, Royal Navy, things like that. So I really joined that company on the premises of the fact that they have interesting clients, and I would want to learn some other stuff than just getting stuck with the video broadcast systems. And yeah, well, it was during COVID, And it was exactly one of the it was the peak of my stressful years in my life on a personal note. So fact that I didn't have anyone else but lousy and not very helpful therapists to talk to about that kind of stuff, I didn't really tell them at work what's really going on, given that knowing those guys, not so long, but still quite on a personal level too, I think they would have understood and tried to help me out to get out of that situation instead of, parting ways as we did. But that's okay, because at the end of the day, I wanted to go away from that company, not because of the company itself, not because of the job, but I really felt bad because of my burnout and the stress. The situation with my now ex-wife was so extreme that I honestly could not simply perform the most basic IT administration tasks without making mistakes. And that just really, it's not something I do at work. It's not something I know myself for. Especially in the broadcast industry, you can't afford to make a single mistake. Yeah, well, I couldn't keep doing that. Not because of my ego itself, but simply regardless of the fact that they weren't paying me a lot of money, I could not look at them and say, it is what it is. I tried my best. I realized I can't do it. Things were going really wrong, badly wrong for me. And we agreed it's best to quit. So since then, so that's in the past 3 years, given that, let's say, I kind of gave up on it all together, at least proactively. So in that sense, it means I was really proactively looking for work. And I mean work pretty much of any kind. Now, as long as it wasn't really so underpaid that it would not be worth my time, like I took the job in the beach club last summer, but it didn't work out because of clearly toxic and inhumane attitude of the owners of the venue. But other than that, I was willing to do whatever it takes and sent over 2,500 applications for sure, because that's on average I sent 5 to 10 applications, and that was for a wide range of jobs, from sort of an IT admin to technical project management, technical lead, sometimes even more towards the executive levels. Either way, all of these jobs were handpicked. So I looked at my skill set, I looked at my experience, and that's not just the experience on a technical level. That also means experience with people, experience with managing people, leading the teams, organizing projects, things like that. Obviously, I have a lot on my resume. But unlike in the past, where I actually had to push off and reject job offers on a monthly basis, ever since 2020, things have changed. One is because of the automation systems and AI, which only got better over time. First, it meant that's already started happening before 2020. Whenever you're sending your CV to the company or anywhere else, it automatically gets scanned by their automated system, and you get a score, for whatever the score. Now, the scores would usually be based on, your level of expertise, of course, how many years have you worked, what kind of companies you worked for, and then also how long have you worked for each of these companies. Now, if you spend your whole life working as a freelancer, you probably will come out with a really bad score just on the basis of the fact that projects usually last about a year or two, and then you move on. Some projects even less. So, when you look at my profile, what do you see? If you don't ask the right questions, what does the system see? What does a person with short attention span and not being able to understand the nuances, what do they see? A job hopper. So it's a red flag. And then, of course, the longer this job hunting went on, the longer I was outside of the career. So it's considered a career break. Very unwelcome. Second thing is, which no companies will openly admit, but whenever you ask, if you ask the right person the right question and they want to answer it honestly, age. After, it's not just my age, it's pretty much when you're 35 plus, getting employed gets harder and harder by each year and later by the months. So there's that. And then the last but not least, before I finish the subject of actual job hunting and then leave you with some of my funny stories of some of the best bosses I've ever had. The last but not least, what's happening right now on networks like LinkedIn, Indeed.com, and also other job hunting websites, and then the companies posting the job ads. And this is also something I'm going to show you on the slide next. You can pause and read it. Now, as you can see, 80% of jobs, this is a statistic I'm not pulling out of my head. There's a document somewhere. 80% of the jobs being posted online these days are not actual jobs that are being posted. It's a job ad with either a purpose of data mining, so the companies get your data for free, and then either they are building their own databases of prospects and talent skills and all this kind of stuff, not in order to hire, but in order to see and analyze which ones they are categorically going to try and cut down in the costs and everything. So they're gathering information from people like me, for example, when they ask, how much do you want to work for? I give them the figure, and this is where the conversation will end, if it even gets to that point, of course. So what do? Is they ask for all the information. So if they're not providing you with the job description immediately and the pay rate, especially with my experience and in my field of work generally, that's what is expected these days. You don't just go in for 4-stage interviews and then later find out how much you're gonna get paid. No, it's pretty normal to ask now for a pay rate in advance. So if they're not offering any of this information to you, you can bet your money that the job is actually a ghost job, which means they post a job that doesn't exist in order to collect information, and then they are using that information either to train their own AI or to even sell it to the data brokers. And you would be surprised that a single email address with some personal parameters like your health, your purchasing habits, whatever else is going on, it's pretty valuable. It goes anywhere between $10 to $70, $80 per email address, depending on, how much of the rest of the data is available connected to that single profile. But it's valuable. It costs people anywhere from, $20 per month to $100 per year to remove their data from these data brokers, which is not successful at all. It is, but it's an ongoing process. It never ends. So data mining, ghost jobs, and also the fact that companies are legally obliged to show that they are hiring. But let's be honest, if you look at the 2008 crisis when it happened, everyone was posting, everyone was seemingly hiring. But when you actually knew, when you were behind, if you were already in the job at that point, what do you see? What do you know it's happening? It's called the freeze, the headcount freeze. They stop hiring. If they need resources, they're gonna hire freelancers because they are easiest to fire, even though a little bit more expensive than a regular employee. So, on top of all these things, we're competing with people from all over the world using AI to apply for jobs. And that also means they're lying on their CVs, they are adding, changing or adapting their profile to specifically target that job, whether they're actually a good fit or not. It's interesting because there's a lot of people who are basically called polymaths. It's not a jack of all trades and master of none, although that is a popular term as well. But as we become great in one skill or set of skills that we develop, and this is very, very common in the technical field. This is what people don't understand. People see an IT guy like a computer geek and that's it. But information technology people are one of the best people to access knowledge, assess the value and validity of that knowledge, and learn. So also adapt learning systems, new learning methods, and all this kind of stuff. The key word here is information. And then technology. So when you use technology and information together for the purpose of having good information quality, well, guess what? You're definitely far more informed, better informed, and way more versatile than a lot of people who may be specialists in something amazing, such as astrophysicists, or I don't know, someone developing superconductors for companies like ASML. Like, there are people who are really extremely good at what they do, but then they still cannot go home and change the goddamn light bulb. And that's a fact. And then there's people like myself, and I don't want to like blow on my ego, tap my own shoulder, but it is what it is. That's a fact. I'm very handy with tools, very creative in many ways, really smart. I can solve problems while I'm flying on my feet, so they say. Like, that's an expression. If there's a problem, I don't need a lot of time to come up with a solution. And quite often these solutions are sort of intuitive, based with experience and all of this kind of stuff. But it just operates, let's say, on a different level. And that is because I have worked in so many different environments with so many different cultures across so many different departments. You know, you want to build a system for a company, you're going to have to know how to build the financial part of the system. You're going to have to know how to build the marketing part, how to build the sales technical stuff. So you have to learn some of the basic principles of everything you're getting involved with. When I was working as a technical lead or a technical project manager, what skills did I have to learn? Well, mainly soft skills is like communicating with people that are highly technical, and then people who are not so technical, but they are in a management position, or customers, which usually are the most difficult to talk with, or people who are providing you hardware or service and things like that. But they have to deliver something very specific, something very custom for your job. So you have to give them a lot of instructions. And that's exactly what's going on in the world every single day. It doesn't matter whether it's software development, whether it's systems, whether it's, I don't know, food delivery company. There's so many things going on around every single business. The main gatekeepers, for example, specifically here in Netherlands lately, before they had this new right-wing government, there was no problem with the fact that, you know, you could work as an international in a Dutch company where, yeah, people do speak Dutch, but most of the people were definitely aware of the fact that Dutch language is not a mandatory requirement to be able to perform 90% of the jobs around here. But since 2020, and since their different government, although I don't think their liberals or the right wing is any different from each other, they're just talking different stuff, working for the same mafia. The thing is, now they keep Dutch language as a gateway, because in all these 2,500 applications, clearly I must have had some interviews, some headhunters also approaching me without me sending them anything. Yeah, I did. One of them told me I'm asking for too little, which was frankly very shocking. For the first time in my life, someone is trying to actually lift up my price instead of put it down. Weird things do happen. It almost made me think, did she say that just to shut me over even more, like to put myself as too expensive to others and never get anything at all? Who knows? Either way, it was unusual. Another CEO was kind enough to respond to me and explained, yeah, you're a job hopper, you've been too long on a break, and you're too old. You're really good on your profile, which also means you might be too expensive for us. Yeah, well, thanks for being honest, dude. But that's it. And then the last 4 times anyone has approached me, either they are not very consistent in what they're doing because they're still at an early stage and it's a startup, or just full of shit, basically. And then, of course, the last, I was approached just about a week ago. Job I can definitely do blindfolded. It's got everything to do with all the past experience I've got. Video streaming, all sorts of different systems, live and in different locations, so a lot of remote work. I'm perfect. Day rate, pay rate, great. Oh yeah, but you must speak Dutch. Excuse me, for a job where literally all the lingo is done in English because there's no other way. Okay. I know that I will not talk to that recruiter ever again anymore. So that's it. And then the fact that, you know, LinkedIn is actually being used predominantly for data mining, profiling, AI training, and not job networking anymore. That's for this. So it's kind of like the end of the video if you want it. But I want to talk about a couple of funny stories that I had. So my first great boss was actually a chief technical officer in the video company, the commercial TV company. So you have the news broadcast, the sports, the commercial TV, the reality shows, all of it. Chief technical officer, yeah? This guy was really good with many things like software, Oracle databases and all this stuff, but he had no clue about the video to begin with. And then one day, I was still working in an IT support in that business. He calls me, panicking because it's only a few minutes left to his important Skype call. Back then people still used Skype for business. So it was an important call for him. Few minutes left to start the call. And he calls me all panicked. Please help. I don't know how to put the headset into my PC. Okay. I run over to his office. Back then it was the old headset, not USB. You had normal mini mic jacks. Pink for the microphone, green for the speaker, for the headsets. That's all you had to do. And it was nicely labeled on the PC also, pink and green inputs. Okay, I show him how it's done, and that's it. About a year later, the company got a new CEO, and as that guy starts his reign of tyranny, the first thing he does is he puts the electronic ramps into the company and demands for us to clock in and out every time we start work, and we also go out for lunch or anything. We need to be clocked to a minute, but basically to a second. So yeah, I wasn't always, and in our culture, being really punctual was not exactly the most important, especially when you're highly skilled and capable, because at that time I was already promoted from an IT support to a video engineering department, and I did really well. According to the guy who was training me, I was doing better than all of the whole team that was there already for 10 years. So I would normally arrive to work anywhere between 5 minutes early to 5 minutes late. But I would also usually stay longer. Not because I had to or there was much to do, but if I could do something quick enough and shave off a few hours for the end of the week, that's what I did. And usually I wouldn't go home, but we just spent hanging out with colleagues and talking about stuff at the end of the week. Anyway, this boss, the CTO, who didn't know how to plug in the headset pink to pink, green to green, calls me to his office and says, well, I gotta warn you, you're not being a team player. I look at him, what do you mean? I mean, I understand that the other guy is saying I'm a lot better than the rest of the team, but that's not something I keep saying myself, and I don't do that. Like, no, that's not what I mean. You keep coming late to work. And he shows me printouts, 3 times a week, 5 minutes past 9. So this was kind of like a regular thing. And a couple of times, with the fact that at that point I had a small child at home, firstborn, I came in like 15, maybe 20 minutes late. And he points that out. It was already highlighted with a red marker. I'm like, yeah, but also I stayed long enough. If I have to work 8 hours a day, I did work 8 hours a day, 8.5. Lunch is not counted into this, even though it could be. So what do you want me to do? The job's done, everything's done. The only complaint we have right now is about how accurate I am about my timing, which is not very relevant to my work, and it doesn't affect anyone. Yeah, he says, it doesn't matter, new management, new rules, and it's my way or the highway. All right, dude. If you're gonna keep behaving like this, I definitely don't mind going somewhere else where they might actually even pay me more, because I asked you for a minimum pay raise to be able to pay my bills. You said no. I have to work extra hours with a small child at home just to be able to pay my bills, and now you're doing the highway. All right, deal. 2 weeks later, I walked in with a resignation notice and doubled the pay rate from another company. That's how it's basically done. And now I would say the same thing, and I do actually say the same thing. Regardless of how desperate I would be to find work, I prefer to do something hard and heavy if I'm gonna be paid a minimum rate than someone offering me a ridiculously low pay rate for a demanding job that I used to do before. Even if it's office, even if it seems simple, the amount of stress involved in those jobs is not worth it. Not worth what they're offering. So if they can't offer the real deal, tell them I'm so sorry, but please do not contact me again. Don't set your boundaries just with people pissing you off. The most important boundaries you will ever have to set is with people who are hiring you and employing you. Because if you don't show them the fact that you're willing to stand up for yourself, they will keep underpaying you, using you, and then discarding you the moment you're not good enough for them. It's the same pattern everywhere. Love yourself, respect yourself first. Mwah. Peace.